What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the watch list for Game Week 14. So I'm going to go through some of the players that I've got my eye on possibly bringing in over the next couple of game weeks. Obviously, we only have 3 game weeks to go now until the World Cup. So if I'm going to get them in my team, it's going to be sooner rather than later. So we're going to talk through a few. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. And we're going to start off with Saka. Now in Game Week 13, which hasn't quite yet finished at the time of recording, but it will have after tonight, most of us were looking to get at least one of Saka or Foden. I went with Foden in the end. One reason was because he was playing at home. The other one was because Saka was a slight doubt. It was a very, very, very small doubt that he would play. I always thought he probably would, but I used that as the excuse to get Foden. And now I've got to look at getting Saka in this week. And if you look at the fixtures, Nottingham Forest at home is a really, really good fixture. We're going to come on to that in a minute because I know people think the defence is maybe slightly improved, but they do run straight into Chelsea away the week after. Now, the Arsenal attack has been great so far this year. They still, I think they're top 2 now for expected goals generated in total so far this season. Either way, they're top 3 with Man City and Liverpool. So they've been great and they will cause Chelsea some problems. But on the flip side, Graham Potter has got Chelsea defending really well and they're not conceding a huge amount of goals. And obviously they will be the home team as well. So I could see that being quite low scoring. I wouldn't be completely shocked if that's another kind of 1-1 like the game between Chelsea and Man United. We'll see what happens, right? Arsenal have been very good in attack so far this year. So they will cause them problems, like I've said. But I'm not sure there's a huge amount of points in it for Saka. So great for this week, not necessarily so good for Game Week 15. And a lot of us are going to be looking to take out Zaha, who has Southampton at home this week, which is a good fixture. Not as good as Nottingham Forest, I would say, but it's decent enough. And in Game Week 16, he's got Forest. So it's not that easy to make that transfer. But for me, that probably is the only way I'm going to do it. And there's a few things I want to kind of talk about with the Forest fixture and also Saka and fatigue and stuff like that. There was a question asked to me on the stream. I don't know if it was last night or on the deadline stream. Are teams that are in Europe starting to see a little bit of fatigue? Because the season started a little bit earlier. It's much more compact. They started playing European games earlier than they normally would. And obviously, you know, Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea, etc. They're playing games every 3 to 4 days. And Saka, for example, is one of those players who's not getting much rest in the league. I think he started every single game. The problem is we don't have the inside information, right? And clubs and, you know, doctors and all this kind of stuff, physios, whatever, they're always looking at recovery, right? So you see sometimes a player can play week in, week out, you know, midweek, weekend, midweek, weekend, because they recover quickly. Other players don't recover that quick, but Saka is still young, so I don't think we've got too much of a concern over that. And also we can see what happens in Europe, right? So they will play on Thursday again this week against PSV. It is an away game. If Saka goes and plays another 90 minutes, that might be a little bit of a red flag for how he's going to perform on the weekend, but I don't think it would put me off buying someone like Saka, right? And in general, buying players from European teams. We want players from the teams in Europe because they are, in general, the best teams, right? So I think without, you know, a manager coming out and saying, yeah, that player is a little bit fatigued, we might have to manage their minutes, I don't think we can use that to kind of predict future returns. So if Saka, if he plays 90 again, I might be a little bit worried. But if he doesn't, if he's benched and he comes on for a little bit, that wouldn't concern me at all. The other thing to kind of discuss is that Nottingham Forest at home fixture. And I have seen a few kind of comments and stuff that maybe the Nottingham Forest defence is improving. And it's interesting when the eye test and the data kind of conflicts. Because I watched that game, Liverpool-Nottingham Forest, as you might imagine. I had Salah captain, so I did watch it. And I thought Nottingham Forest did defend really well and very compact. You know, they were quite deep and very compact, so it was difficult for Liverpool to get through them without going wide, and they didn't do that very well. But on the flip side, the data says they still conceded 1.8 expected goals. So we're saying Nottingham Forest defended well, but they still conceded enough chances. Van Dijk had a few headed chances. Carvalho had a decent chance. I mean, there was a chance where Salah just completely missed the ball, which is not like him. That wouldn't have even been recorded in those stats as well. So for me, the Nottingham Forest defence is still one to target. And interestingly, for Arsenal, right, for those of you that do like a bit of stats there to make your decisions, at home this season, they have put up over 2 expected goals in every single match. They've been brilliant at home so far this season. So I just don't see how they don't score kind of 2 to 4 goals in this one. And also I think it's very difficult for Nottingham Forest to continue to defend like that, especially away from home. When you've got your home crowd, you know, kind of helping you out, it might be a little bit easier to kind of stay mentally focused. I think you go away to Arsenal, it's much more difficult to defend like that. And also I just think the way that Arsenal have been playing so far this year, they will find ways to deal with that much better than Liverpool did. They were missing Thiago, missing Trent. They kept trying to play through the middle. That didn't really work. They didn't have Trent on to kind of play wide and provide width. I think Arsenal will do that a lot better. And look, you probably don't need me to sit here and tell you that Arsenal at home to Nottingham Forest is a good fixture, but I have seen comments like that start. So I just wanted to discuss them. Ultimately, Saka is a great pick this week. I'm probably going to go for him. I just don't like the idea of selling Zaha. All right, so I want to talk about Callum Wilson. Obviously, Newcastle continuing to impress. A really good win over Spurs. One thing I wanted to ask, actually, let me know down in the comments below. Do you think it was a foul by Wilson on Lloris? Now, I didn't watch the game live. I actually checked the highlights afterwards. And at first, I was thinking maybe you could see it as obstruction, but I just don't think you can. They both went for the ball. Callum Wilson stood still. He didn't try and move into Lloris's way. So I don't think it was obstruction. I do think it was a fair goal. I will say it was a little bit unlucky from Lloris's point of view to not get something there. I think you could see that given. I think ultimately it wasn't a foul, right? So it was a really nice goal, really good finish. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Obviously, if I do look to bring someone like Wilson in, they are going to take up a forward spot. And if we take a quick look at my team, I'm on 3-4-3 mostly. Obviously, I can play Gay or someone like that if I wanted to, but mostly I'm going to play 3-4-3. Haaland can't go anywhere for obvious reasons. Mitrovic has got a really good fixture this week, but after Everton at home, he has got Man City away and Man United at home. Now, I would never write off a penalty taker from getting points in any game, but Man City away is literally the hardest fixture you can have all season. So if I was going to look to get rid of him, it probably would be soon. Maybe not this week, but I'll come back onto that in a minute. The other one's Solanke. Now, he's got Spurs at home, then Leeds away and Everton at home. Obviously, we'll have to see what he does against West Ham. He could end up getting injured. I do have 0.9 million in the bank, so I could upgrade him. I bought him for 5.7 million, so I could only go up to like 6.6 million, which probably isn't enough to really get someone that I'd really want. So Solanke, for that reason, probably has to stay. Now, I'm not advising anyone to sell Mitrovic, but I am a little bit worried about this foot injury he continues to play through. I wasn't watching the Fulham Leeds game. I don't think it was on TV, but I saw people on Twitter saying that Mitrovic had kind of gone down and didn't look great before half-time and that he might come off. Now, obviously, in the end, he didn't come off and he did play the 90 minutes. So it's not necessarily a major concern, but apparently he is still having kind of painkillers and stuff like that to be able to play through it. And I know a lot of people were kind of asking me about, you know, will players not down tools, but be worried about getting injured for the World Cup. And I do wonder how they're going to manage this over the next couple of weeks. Mitrovic, to me, seems like a player, obviously not knowing him personally, that will just want to play every single game regardless. So I don't think it's an issue. But if Marco Silva mentions it in the press conference or anything like that, I might just use the excuse to sell him on before those kind of two tougher fixtures anyway, and just get rid of him. If everything's fine, then I'll just play him for Everton at home, of course. But that's why I'm looking at someone like Wilson. Now, I do think with Wilson, because he's playing Chelsea at home in Game Week 16, this is the week I would have to buy him. If it gets to next week and I want to move Mitrovic on, I'd probably start looking at a different striker like Scamacca instead. I think he's an option for those of you that want to move one of your kind of forwards on. But I just think Wilson has been brilliant so far this year. He's scoring a goal kind of every other game at the moment, 0.56 goals per 90 minutes. His expected goals are really good, and he's obviously playing in a Newcastle team that have just been brilliant so far this year. They've just beaten Spurs 2-1, they've kept Man United to a draw, and they continue to generate lots and lots of good chances. I think they're in the top 5 for expected goals as well so far this season. Now, he is on 4.2 points per game, which is not necessarily ideal, but he did get injured and stuff like that, so I'm not really too concerned. He's already got 4 goals this season, and if we look at how often he's actually played, he's not played that many games, not many full games anyway. And we know that Isak is also going to be out until the World Cup as well. So there's no issues over his place and stuff like that. So he has played 5 games since he got injured and 3 games before. So in 8 games, he's got 4 goals, 1 assist. That's a pretty good return for a £7.3 million player that is obviously on penalties as well. So I think Wilson's a pretty good option. You could obviously look at Tony as well if you wanted to, but he's still got to play Man City, I think it is, before Game Week 16. We'll just double check that. I think in Game Week 16, Newcastle got Chelsea and Brentford have Man City away, is it? I could be wrong. Yeah, Man City away. But they do get to play Nottingham Forest before that. So it is a close call between the two. I think if you were going to bring one in, you'd maybe want to have another spare transfer in game week 16 to go for someone else. And you could look at, let's have a quick look. I mean, Solanke's got Everton. This is nice. If Calvert-Lewin's still playing, he could be an option if you've got the cash to do that. Skamaka against Leicester is an option as well if we're looking at cheaper forwards. Jesus against Wolves if you've got a spare Arsenal slot as well. But there's not a huge amount of options, which is why I kind of like Wilson. So I think it'd be between him and Tony. But if there's any doubts about Mitrovic, which there aren't right now, I have to say, I may look to use one of the transfers and move him on. So I think Rashford's a really interesting one. He's only 6.6 million, so he's pretty cheap for a midfielder. I think he's played really well for Man United so far this season. Maybe even slightly gone under the radar. Not from an FPL perspective, but just how well he's played. I think in that number 9 position, I haven't always been that confident in him, but I do think he's got better. And if he doesn't play there, let's say Martial can get himself fit, who is probably the first choice number 9. He obviously doesn't keep himself fit that often, but if he is able to play, he will play in that position. But Rashford should just move over to the left. I know some people are going to be concerned over Rashford's minutes because you've got Sancho there as well. And I do think it's unlikely that Rashford plays many of these games up to 90 minutes, but I wouldn't be shocked if he started every single one because Sancho just hasn't been great. Obviously, if you want someone absolutely nailed on, you go for Anthony on the right, but I think as an FPL option, if they're both on the pitch, Rashford is the better player to go with. So he's who I would be looking at 6.6 million. The problem comes, I mean, the fixtures are pretty good. They're not amazing, but they're pretty good. And I do think Man United are improving. West Ham at home is not going to be easy. Obviously, they've got to go away to Villa now. We'll have to see how well they continue to play. They've obviously got rid of Gerrard, had a really good result first game against Brentford. We'll have to see if they can keep that up. But I still think Man United can go there and get goals. And the same for Fulham as well. Fulham have not been fantastic defensively. So I think fixtures-wise, they're okay. And obviously, some of that is counteracted by the fact that Rashford's only 6.6 million. The problem with that is, and I was discussing this on the stream last night, you know, players like Eze and Almiron, we don't really need cheap midfielders, right? A lot of you have either got Salah but probably not Trent, in which case you've got money to spend, or you just don't have either, in which case you've got money to burn. Like you can get Foden, you can get Saka, Zaha, Bowen, etc. And there's not really a slot for Rashford. So this is for somebody that is either moving to 3-5-2 and wants a cheaper midfielder, in which case I think Rashford's probably the one I would look at. We'll come on to the others in a minute. Or it's for someone that doesn't quite have the team structure or the squad value to have all those £8 million midfielders they want. And in one of those positions, they've got to compromise. Like you could definitely look at Almiron as well. And I cannot believe we're even in game week 14, we're discussing Rashford versus Almiron. Who would have thought that would have happened at the start of the season? But you've got to give the guy credit. He's played extremely well so far. His minutes should also be good because of the injuries that Newcastle have in attack. And he's obviously got 6 goals. So he's actually scored double the amount of goals than Rashford. But when you look at the underlying numbers, expected goals, expected assists, Rashford does win out on that. So I would hope over the long term, it would mean Rashford gets a few more returns. But it obviously doesn't necessarily always work like that. And we're only looking at the next 3 game weeks. So if you wanted to go for someone else, you could look at Almiron. There's obviously Eze at Crystal Palace as well. We don't need multiple of these players because we just have the cash to go for the likes of Foden and Saka and still fit in the rest of the attackers and defenders we want. But for those of you that need a cheap one, I think you could look at Almiron for sure, but I think I would just about prefer Rashford. I know some people are going to say that's Man United bias, but I've barely recommended a Man United player at all this season. Again, there are some slight concerns over minutes and starts and stuff like that because of Sancho, but I just don't think he's played well at all so far this season. So I think Rashford will almost always get the nod. And if the stuff continues with Ronaldo and Martial can't get himself fit, Rashford's going to play number 9 anyway. So I like him as a punt. I'm almost certainly not going to get him this week because I'll probably just go for Saka instead. But if my midfielders are looking like they got dodgier fixtures in 15 or 16, I could see myself taking the punt. I don't need the money, but I like him anyway. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below who is on your watch list, what you think of these 3 players that I recommended. Do you think there's other players instead that we should be looking at around similar price points? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll catch you tomorrow for another video.